Lecture, we'll be talking about citizen participation. Citizen participation is something that is intricately connected with empowerment because empowerment is considered to be the broader process, whereas citizen participation is the specific strategy through which an individual or a group of individual in a particular community can empower themselves. So I repeat this point that empowerment is a broader process, whereas participation, civic engagement, citizen participation is the specific strategy for empowerment. Now, if you look at this definition by Wandersman et al., the process in which individuals take part in decisions making in institutions, programs, and environments that affect them. So, if you go back to some of my early lectures on empowerment, I gave this quote which said that there is no worse way of making decisions than by giving the decision making in hands of those people who are never going to be affected by these decisions, especially if they turn out to be bad decisions. So, if I ask you that um, in the society, in the community that you live, in the country that you live in, what is the extent to which your voices or the voices of the group of people, whether these are women's voices, LGBT communities' voices, your caste, your class community's voice, tribal communities' voices, to what extent are these voices represented in the greater decisions that are made at the level of the country, at the level of maybe your city, your district, etc. So, the extent to which, come to this diagram, the extent to which you participate, actively participate in the decisions that affect you, we would call this to be democracy. So, in one way, the heart of democracy is actually citizen participation. If there is an elected body that does not listen to its citizens, that does not listen to the members of this particular city community, then that would not be a democracy, that would be autocracy. So, citizen participation means making one's voices heard and influencing decisions in a democratic way. Now, coming to this interesting concept of citizenship. Now, citizenship, when you say I am a citizen, a lot of people definitely just end up thinking, okay, I have a passport of this country. But citizenship means rights. It means something very small, as not small actually, it's a huge thing, voting rights. So you have rights, you focus on competencies, and you have collaborative and not hierarchical relationship. Collaborative relationship means, go back to this, the government and the people are in a collaborative relationship, not in a hierarchical relationship where government is here and citizens are here. So, if let's come to this example of sex workers. So, when I say sex workers as citizens, so I am talking about sex workers having a bank account, sex workers having a voting card, Aadhaar card, PAN card, sex workers probably filing taxes and having safe work environment, their rights as any other worker, as probably as a teacher, a doctor, an engineer, etc. So sex sex work or sex workers as citizens is a very empowering concept. Now, you also need to understand that citizenship can be used to exclude many people from participation. So, when I say you're not the citizen of India, so it means a lot of things, but one of the things that it means is you do not get to vote in our country. So, you would have certain politicians who would make these comments like all Indians are Hindus. So, what this means is that anyone who is not a Hindu is not Indian and therefore is a lesser citizen of the country and therefore doesn't have the same rights as probably you would. Now, come to these concepts of global citizenship and cultural citizenship. Now, these two concepts have actually expanded the notion of citizenship. So, global citizenship means, which a lot of young generation Z and millennials feel, that we are at the same time Indian, and yet we belong to the world. So we identify with, the identity as Indian, and as well as we identify with the identity of being a human. So being so with this concept comes the responsibility of inheriting or leaving behind a planet that is worthy of living for the future generations. Now come to the concept of cultural citizenship. Cultural citizenship means that, um, I may be different. I may belong to a different culture. So, for instance, if I may dress up like no one else dresses up in this particular class, and yet that does not mean that my opinions or my values will be, my beliefs would be valued lesser when it comes to deciding. Let's say in class, when it comes to deciding who's going to be the class representative, then just because I am different from maybe 90% of the other people in the class, that my voice will, or my vote will count less for lesser. So if you go back, there are certain, way back in time, um, the women's votes. So women were not allowed to vote. So women were given the voting rights in America after the suffragette movement. So after this movement, it's, you can say, women became empowered, and in true sense they became the citizens of the country. So coming to the last part here, yeah, participation. Now we've discussed citizenship. Let's focus a little bit about on participation. Now, what does participation mean? Does participation, so I'll give you an example. Like when I grew older, I didn't believe that I needed to take permission from my parents, and that informing them would be good enough for for me. So if I, let's say, had to go on a trip, so I would tell my dad that, okay, I'm going here, whatever place, and he would ask me, okay, are you asking me or are you telling me? And I was like, okay, whichever one you actually prefer, whichever, because I'm going at the end of the day. So asking and informing hold very different meanings. uh, Participation does not just mean that, it could mean many things. It could mean that we allow this person from this particular community to come and sit with us, just like you were seeing, you saw probably in the gram panchayat case study that I've been using since a very long time, that through reservation, women panchayat members, for of course in many places they're proxy for their husbands, but in many places you'd also find that women have been now allowed to come and sit in these meetings. But if you go a little bit ahead, does this mean that women are now actively voicing their concerns, their opinions, their suggestions in the meetings? And if they do, how do the other, which is actually mostly male, majority male kind of a setting, how are they receiving their participation? So, and again, I've given this example another time in class, that there was a research that found that if women are speaking one third of the time in a mixed sex, you have men and you have women also sitting, and if women are speaking one third of the time, men tend to report that women are dominating the conversation. So, citizen participation does not just mean that you are consulting, telling, or just gaining consent. It actually is can be understood in terms of this ladder, which begins from informing. So you could have people where you could have situations in which you don't even feel the need to inform the women, let's say for instance, about the decisions that are being taken in the gram panchayat meetings, because they're attended by mostly males, and none of these males come up, and probably not many of them are coming up and discussing it with their wives and their sisters. So there's the one way communication information mean something below this would be it's not happening. So one way communication is informing, then you move to consulting, then you move to involving, and then collaboration is where you come 50-50, and towards the end would actually be something which is real empowerment, which is real genuine participation. So you can't say it won't be right to say that this is participation and this is not. You can again think of it in terms of probably degrees. Actually a better way of putting it is what is how Einstein puts it, that it is ladder of participation. So this is where we yeah, let me just also discuss this case study. So if you the Sonagachi project members case study, go ahead and read that case study, and if there is a detailed question on this particular portion, then you can expand on this. Now in this case study, how are the project members who are sex workers themselves, how are they participating in making decisions regarding the project? So they can participate through supporting a vulnerable sex worker by promoting savings in the bank project's bank. They are asking other sex workers also to open a bank account, uh, participate in providing project services, participating in accessing the project services, participating in shaping project workers activity, and participating in defining the project goals. So what are our project goals going to be? um, Participating in delivering those goals, participating in accessing those goals, and participating in what are my activities going to be to achieve those goals. Do I have a say in it, or am I just doing what I'm being told? So last part is participation means or an end? It means that simply put, participation is often encouraged to improve participation. So if I say, okay, my students do not participate in the class, now if I think of it in absolute terms, it actually means nobody talking in class and just one way communication happening, which is what is happening through this video right now. But and on the other end, it actually means incorporating feedback. Includes your voices, your suggestions, your basically a two-sided communication, which is what we expect should happen in a classroom. But for me to reach that end of uh, what you can now understand as citizen participation, for me to reach that end, I would need to encourage, or so the ladder needs to, so I cannot be jumping to the last step. So perhaps through actively participating in an everyday manner, it may not appear to be what a final product is supposed to look like, but it is only through, so maybe an entire semester I encourage a student to ask question, to clarify, to analyze, to be critical, to give feedback, and then mm, slowly and steadily this person comes up and then asks a question maybe in 2 weeks time, then has a debate in class in maybe 3 months time, 4 months time. So basically every single drop in the ocean kind of counts. So citizen participation now, and a point to be noted towards the end, is that it may not always be better, especially um, if valid expertise is ignored and if conflicts are not resolved. So let's take up this first. Conflicts are not resolved. So of course, if there are 10 people in the room, 10 people can say probably 100 different things, and we need to arrive at a consensus because we need to move forward. So, I think someone asked this question again in class sometime, that what do we do? Dissent is healthy. If there is disagreement, we must understand that something is going right. And you've already done social psychology. If there is agreement and everyone is agreeing, then that may not always be the best thing. So, the attitude that one needs to keep towards this kind of a circumstance, that we'll always find, whether it's at a workplace, whether it's at college, whether it's in family, so you go back to your levels of analysis, or even in the country for that matter, society, country, city. um, if there is dissent, it is good. Disagreement should be seen as a source of information rather than threat. So, uh, understanding this is probably going to help us to resolve the conflicts. If the conflicts reach that level that is difficult to resolve, then citizen participation is not going to achieve its goal of empowerment, broader goal of empowerment. And last part, citizen participation is also not always better when valid expertise is ignored. So, if and I'm going to use a very simple example, after which this point would be very clear to you. If I have to go for a surgery, let's say, and I say, okay, democratically, I'm going to ask everyone in this class, should I go for a surgery or not? And I take a voting. Okay, how many of you think I should go for surgery, and how many of you think I shouldn't go for surgery? That in this particular situation in question, citizen participation is not better, because I need expert opinion. I need a doctor to tell me whether a surgery is needed or not needed. So, this is where we end this concept of citizen participation.